Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Policy Committee. Just a bit of housekeeping. The meeting, as you are aware, is virtual, so please be patient with the proceedings, just in case we have the odd little hiccup with communication. The way that we will be going through the meeting is, first of all, once we get to the main items, we'll go to the officers' report, and then after that we have two speakers tonight, Mr. Patrick and Councillor Kevin O'Brien. We'll bring those in. They will then go back into the waiting room. We'll then have the members' debate. We will then have a look at the recommendation. After we've had the debate, we'll have a proposer and seconder, and then go to the vote, and we will be verbally voting so that Anne can make a note of the result, and I'll then state what the decision is that we've reached. I think, Anne, you'd like to take a register at this point?
Thank you, Chair. If you could indicate present when I read out your name. Councillor Mike Tebbert.
Present.
Councillor Linda Adams.
Present.
Councillor John Currell.
Present.
Councillor Ruth Groom.
Present.
Councillor Greg Titcombe.
Present.
Councillor Margaret Talbot.
You're here, Margaret. I've seen you.
Yeah, Councillor Talbot is here. We also have present tonight James Wilson and Simon Richardson from Development Control, Callum Galuzzo, who is the committee manager tonight, and myself, Anne Ireson, acting as the committee administrator, taking the minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much indeed.
I know Councillor O'Hara may be a few minutes late, so if Callum can bring her in when she arrives, that would be good. We have two apologies and two substitutes, I believe, Anne. Yes?
Yes, Chair. With apologies from Countess and Sedwin Brown, Councillor Greg Titcombe and Councillor Margaret Talbot are acting as substitutes.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? I suppose we've all got to declare interest because we are all extremely interested in the outcome of this consultation. But there's no pecuniary or interest in place. Can we just go through the meeting of the Councillor Groom? Sorry, Councillor Groom.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got my usual declaration of interest as a member of Burton Town Council, but also as an employee of the County Council Library Service. That's my usual one. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go through the minutes of the meeting that we held on the 1st of September, page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. And page 7. Page 7 is the item on there. We did resolve that officers prepare the draft response, and that's in fact the main item on this evening's meeting. So your wish that I sign them as a true record? Thank you. I've got no items of business to be looked at that are urgent. And I've got 2 members of the public who wish to speak on item 6. And they will be brought in from the waiting room after the presentation by Simon Richardson. So we'll move straight on to Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Before we start with this item, I'd just like to bring 2 matters to your attention. The first matter being the, I suppose, the sister consultation to this one, that being another consultation that's been run by the Ministry, and that was entitled Changes to the Current Planning System Consultation. It was a consultation that we didn't, because of the window in place for that consultation, we weren't able to bring it to yourselves. I believe we may have made mention to it at the last meeting on the 1st of September. Just to confirm to yourselves, what I did was I prepared a response. I related that response into conversations with the North Northamptonshire Joint Planning and Delivery Unit. So we submitted a joined up response, and I made it quite clear that it was an officer response, that item had not been to committee for members' approval. But Ketonboro Council did make a response on that one. The second item is in relation to update you on the progress that's being made with the site-specific Part 2 local plan examination. The hearing sessions opened last week on Thursday. So Thursday and Friday were sitting days, and then it reopens again tomorrow and is due to finish on Friday. Just to let you know, in essence, that the sessions are running to time, are well attended, and proceedings are running well. So just to update you on that matter.
Thank you very much indeed for that update. Good evening, Councillor O'Hara, welcome. We'll move straight on now to item 6, which is the planning for the future white paper consultation. Simon, can you take us through your presentation, please?
Will do, Chair, thank you. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the contents of the planning for the future white paper and to agree the Council's response. The white paper was published on the 6th of August, running for 12 weeks, and a report was presented to the last meeting of this committee on the 1st of September. It was resolved that officers prepare a draft response to the white paper for consideration by this committee. Members will recall that the white paper proposes significant reforms to the planning system. The consultation closes on the Thursday, the 29th of October, so there is still a couple of weeks or so to go on that one. So turning to paragraph 2.7, the white paper puts forward 24 proposals for the planning system and asks, that's an error there, 26 I think it is, questions with 5 general themes. I propose to run through those themes. So firstly, streamlining the planning process with more democracy taking place more effectively at the plan making stage. So issues there relate to simplifying the role of the local plans, identifying growth areas, renewal areas and protected areas. Also, general development management policies will be set nationally, looking at reinventing engagement with the public through the local plan process, and also highlight to you decision making should be faster and more certain. Secondly, to take a radical digital first approach driven by data. This one is about local planning authorities using digital tools to support a new civic engagement process and local plans built on standardized rules and data. The third area is a new focus on design and sustainability. This to combat climate change, to bring about improvements in energy efficiency standards. Ask for beauty to be far more ambitious and to create a net gain. To make it easier for those who want to build beautifully again, design guidance and codes, prepare locally and locally genuine community involvement. And also ensure that each local planning authority has a chief officer for design and placemaking. There's also an enhanced role for Homes England and within its strategic objectives. Fourthly is to improve infrastructure delivery. This relates to the Community Infrastructure Levy, which will be reformed as a nationally set value-based flat rate charge called the Infrastructure Levy. It also proposes to be more ambitious for affordable housing and give greater powers to determine how developer contributions are used. That to be given to the local authorities, so potentially a bit more flexibility in there. Fifthly, ensure more land is available for homes and development and support renewal of our town centres. This through a new nationally determined housing requirement, to speed up construction where development has been permitted, better information on local communities, promote competition and assist small and medium enterprises, and to make sure publicly owned land and investment supports thriving places. So attached to this this report is Appendix 1. This provides a draft response for submission by Ketonboro Council. This will form the fundamental basis of the Council's response, and it's proposed that further work is being undertaken across Northamptonshire. So members are asked to delegate the preparation of the Council's final response to the interim head of development services with the chair of planning policy. I propose now, though, to take you through the issues considered necessary to comment upon. To start off, though, you will recall I mentioned 26 questions. I haven't approached it in that same way in going through each of the questions in turn. I think my conclusion was there were some overriding headlines that warranted more specific comments. So I focused on those particular issues as the lead comments from Ketonboro Council. So in terms of general comments, there are seriously concerned at the lack of evidence or detail within the white paper. That is point 2. Point 3, proposals will significantly reduce the link planning has with democracy and local people's ability to influence planning. 4 is clear signs of failings where the government have extended permitted development rights. So there's some concerns and questions being raised by us there. 5, the foundation of planning is laid by evidence. However, in this case, the white paper appears devoid of this same foundation. 6, the white paper criticises local authorities for a shortage of housing land. However, I wanted to make the point that Ketonboro Council can identify land in excess of its requirement. In fact, I think the figure is 24% enhancement on its housing requirement. Moving now, members, onto the principles of the zones, proposing that there be protected areas. These are development management policies will be set out nationally. No indication as to the extent or quality of these nationally set policies. And also within that, it's impossible to form a judgment, therefore a sense of caution. There's no detail about what these national policies may contain or how they may relate to individual authorities. Point 8 is relates to renewal areas, so another zone. So this is a mix of different planning regimes. And the impression there is that it appears very complex and potentially disjointed in its approach. So it's not a clear zone, although the efforts are clear through the name renewal areas. 9 relates to growth areas, and this indicates that permission will be given at the plan adoption stage. So just a moment ago when I was talking about the local plan, really at the present time at a relatively early phase of development process, and it's proposing that planning permission in effect would form a part of that plan adoption stage. Also, it avoids the reserved matters process, which currently allows some form of democratic oversight or comment in the decision making. Significantly more emphasis is on the plan making process, therefore. 10 relates to codes and pattern books, and these would need to be carefully assessed and agreed. Again, it's setting, to my mind, it's setting a palette or a rule book without necessarily looking at the site that you're setting that for. It's setting it as a theme within that approach. Number 11 looks at local plans. Local plans will be 2/3 shorter in their page numbers. I should have had a look to see how long ours is to give you an indication. But with that, it seems difficult to achieve, given that there are some elements of further detail that's being required to ensure that we maintain the high beauty standards being proposed. Moving on to neighbourhood plans, it's unclear how neighbourhood plans fit into the three zone system. The concern is that neighbourhood plans may simply be limited to contributing to local design codes. The taking back of the planning powers will harm democracy and the hard work local groups are putting into providing planning policies that are appropriate to their areas. Number 13 looks at the opportunity for the public to influence, and that will be lost through some elements of this process. This has the potential of marginalising local people on planning process. A clear risk is that the focus around digital information will be at the expense of more traditional forms of communicating information. That's unclear, but it doesn't say in addition to other forms standing out on in cold shops, talking to people about what's being proposed and how they wish to see their areas developed. Moving on then to the National Infrastructure Levy. The detail here is sketchy, and I've specified from Ketonboro Council's point of view, assessments have always shown that sticking to Section 106 agreements, these tend to be more effective than SIL when we've looked at that, assessed that, and assessed the benefits in terms of supporting infrastructure delivery through the development process. Number 15 is that there's so little detail within the infrastructure levy, with no evidence of having been successful through modelling or testing. There's clear statements there, but no confidence provided that would necessarily be successful. And it's the feeling that needs to be looked at in far greater depth. So in summary, finally, the biggest concern is that this white paper will marginalise local people and threaten the reputation of planning as a vehicle for shaping quality places where people want to live. Happy to take any questions.
We'll come back on questions in a moment, Simon, if we can. We'll listen to the two speakers first of all. First of all, can we bring in Mr. John Padwick, please?
Everyone's double check. Through now.
Good evening, John. can you unmute yourself, please? John, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
You can now.
I can now, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, councillors. Yeah, really impressed by what Simon's just said. I like a lot of the comments in that response. I've got three major concerns on this white paper. I'm concerned about the future of genuinely affordable rented housing and mixed communities, which I fear the proposals would threaten by giving developers a green light and putting an emphasis on discounted market housing for first-time buyers, rather than focusing on the supply of affordable rented and socially rented houses. That's the first concern. Second concern is that the planning system seems to be blamed and seems to be seen as the main barrier to house building. It possibly needs simplifying. It is frustrating at times, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be wiped away and replaced wholesale. The system has evolved sensitively over the years, and I think that needs to be respected and taken account of. But my main concern is the principle of local democratic control and scrutiny on individual development schemes, which is vitally important. And I think the white paper takes a lot of this away. It talks about beautiful and sustainable places, but who decides what's beautiful? It's a very subjective term. And sustainable places need to have an input from local people who understand their local system, not by an increasingly centralized system. There needs to be, and there needs to remain to be, proper local consultation. We at a local level can be frustrated by local plans and the joint core strategies, but at least we've had an opportunity to be involved in them. The white paper talks about the importance of engagement, but we know how difficult that can be to achieve, and there are no ideas here to take that forward in place of local authority structures. It seems almost to bypass the role of local councillors. It seems that as we move into the new unitary authority and worry even then about planning decisions being made by more distant councillors from Kettering, this white paper could take the control further away from local authorities and local communities and prescribe from the centre what can be built, what is beautiful, where and why. In many ways, developers must be rubbing their hands with glee. In this proposed system, there would be little or no discussion about contentious developments such as the warehouses at Weekly Hall Woods, against which over 9,000 people have now objected. That application would be a fait accompli. It's not right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, John.
I should put you back into the waiting room, Mr. Padwick.
Thank you very much.
On YouTube. Thank you.
And can you bring in, please, Councillor Kevin O'Brien?
You can, Chair.
Can you unmute, please, Kevin? And apply the video. Yeah, we can see you, but we can't hear you yet, Kevin. Can you? Ah, that's better.
There you go.
Welcome. You've got 3 minutes, John, Kevin.
Thank you, Councillor Tebbit. Thanks all the councillors for allowing me to address you this evening.
Kevin, can you speak a little bit closer or louder to the microphone, please? You would.
Yeah. Oh, is that better? Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Councillor Tebbit and all councillors for allowing me to speak with you. I agree largely with what Councillor Richardson and John Patrick have just said. Having read the Planning for the Future document, I have to raise concern that far from building effective shortcuts in the system, the proposal further demolishes our democratic society. Fact is, it is a proposal significantly reducing any local authority input and worse still, minimising those community voices. Amongst the alternative options for the 30-month statutory timescale for local plans it is recorded that the removal of the right to speak is a distinct possibility. This, of course, would disempower the electorate through their removal. As I speak this evening, we all retain a democratic right to be involved in decision-making with a planning system that is in place to be public, transparent, robust and accountable. These proposed reforms favour developers unfairly, offering low-hanging fruit as they continue to urbanise the countryside with this government proposal that removes any real scrutiny. Investigating some of the headline areas in the proposal, I'm very concerned that neighbourhood plans are devalued, particularly as these should remain subject to strategic environmental assessment. National planning policy frameworks, if anything, should be revised, particularly in areas such as we'll have where unity authorities exist to be more inclusive, not less, for local communities and authorities to develop for the greater good of the locality. And this is where neighbourhood plans play to their strengths, as they can be an imaginative vision for the future, with the authors being those that know their area and their community best. Before bricks and mortars are laid, infrastructure must be improved, particularly where affordable housing is needed most, whatever affordable housing means. Under this proposal, it is easy to see that the bulk of developments would be on the outskirts of our towns, whether they be urban or open countryside. As the late councillor David Soames used to say, once red roofs arrive, our countryside is gone forever. Are any of these new developments really built in mind with tackling climate change targets and addressing ecological emergencies? New developments loosely cling to local sentimentality by being named usually after someone or something that's gone. As an example, Woodland Valley in Rothwell, where 700 dwellings are being built as we speak. However, I don't see too much woodland and I don't see too much valley. There will only be more cars with reduced green space and trees and hedgerows being destroyed. If there is a housing shortfall, it is not the current planning system that has failed. It is the developers whose real customers are their shareholders, not the house buyers. As I mentioned it, to prove the point, look at how long it has taken for the first land grabbers to arrive at Rothwell North when first outline planning permission was given in 2007. Although there is a £400 million fund in this proposal as well, how long will that last for removing derelict buildings and decontamination costs on brownfield land in particular? Finally,
yeah, okay, Kevin.
Finally, sorry. Throughout 2020, we've all come to realise the significance of our open spaces when it comes to supporting those tortured by the black dog of mental health issues. The solace and liberty gained from a countryside walk clears the mind and improves the body. Again, local and community knowledge will reveal that particularly across Northamptonshire countryside, many brownfield sites are necessary not only for humankind, but the territory of wildlife. If any good is to come from COVID-19, it is the understanding on the importance of protecting our natural green spaces for several reasons. Our legacy has to be to do everything we can to keep them green for the next generations by not building on them. I ask this council to make a considered response on behalf of the people you are all here to represent and not one to satisfy a government.
Thank you very much indeed, Kevin. I think we share a lot of your concerns. Both Kevin and John, could you please make sure that you submit your own comments direct to government on their planning portal website, because it's important that they hear it from you as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just put you back into the waiting room. The meeting will continue on YouTube for you.
Councillor Ruth Groom has put her hand up first, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Simon Richardson for the excellent work he has done in the resume he's done of the white paper, and also in the draft response. I think you always do an excellent job, Simon, and you've done it again, so thank you. The other thing, I would certainly agree with all that Simon has identified as problems. I think most of all the lack of engagement and the lack of democracy. I've done nearly 26 years on Ketonboro Council, and I think it's very important that we use our local residents as our local experts who sometimes spot things that we haven't spotted, like dangers with the road, like access, like all sorts of things. And quite a lot of the time when somebody has not been happy about a development, I've taken them through the system. I've taken them through making a speech. I've taken them through to the meetings. And we don't always get what we want out of the planning system, but at least we understand, and we can explain to other people how it works. So at least if they don't get what they want, they often understand why and why they've had to compromise. And so I think that I'm very happy certainly with the draft response that Simon has put together, and I agree with what both our speakers have said, and I think it's very important that we get behind this response, and we try to, as town councillors as well and as individuals, we need to take every opportunity to make these very important points to central government. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor O'Hara, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few queries. Simon, can I ask you on item 6, page 3, where we look at the new focus on design and sustainability? It says, ensure the planning system supports our efforts to combat climate change and maximises environmental benefits. Is there anything we can do whereby, at the minute, the government's released a sum of money for a couple of months so that you can eco-proof your home almost, whereby you get a grant. So therefore, if you've got double glazing or you've got, I don't know, insulation in the loft or whatever, you can then go for a ground source or air source heat pump. But to do those kind of things, it costs a fortune. For a 3-4 bedroom house, you're looking at £11,000-12,000. You're not going to get a grant for that kind of money. So retrofitting isn't a good idea. Can we not put something in there that whereby, you know, that's a given, that all new homes now should have that in there, should have the new eco-friendly heating systems put in them now, not later? And in which case, would that need to go into building regulations? Would that be something that we should be saying? And conversely, with the local plans, they've been drawn up to protect areas, to protect our villages, to protect our towns, because like we've said, we're the ones who live here and we know how we would like them to be. So the government saying that, you know, want to reduce them by 2/3 would take all the information out of them and all that hard work that's gone into them, that's been agreed generally by your local authority, because you've worked in symbiosis with them to make sure we've got it right. So to say the government to say to reduce it by 2/3 just is not workable. And I think the local plans should be something that should go into building regs in terms of ensuring that they're adhered to, because more often than not, they're discounted, or the developers try to discount them. And there was something else I thought of, and I can't think what it was now.
You can come back in. You can come back afterwards. Let Simon answer your first question.
Okay, thank you.
You would.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor O'Hara almost answered the first point of the question herself, actually, in relation to building regulations. There have been musings for quite some time about stipulating or enhancing the requirements on energy efficiency in properties. It'll be running now, I guess, 18 months, a couple of years maybe. And there's some minor tweaks that come along, but nothing of any real significance or substance. So it may well be this is another opportunity for us to push that element that little bit harder. And I recognise the costs that can build as a result of investing in some of your own retrofitting property enhancements. And you're right, it's better to do that right from the start and reduce those costs in that way. In terms of,
sorry, whilst you're there, Simon, can you enhance the comment in the our response to make that point, please?
yes, Chair. If at the end I'll make a note to that effect.
Okay.
And if members vote in favour of that point, then yes, I think it
Thank you.
be a smart way to approach it. Definitely.
We're going to move on to the next item.
So in terms of protecting areas.
Sorry, Simon, can I just add that if we put it in there that they should have the eco-friendly, you know, the ground source and the air source heat pumps in from the outset, then if more people are using them, the cost will go down anyway, because there'll be more companies produce them. At the minute, you've got 3 companies that produce them, 3 bigger companies that produce them. Yeah. But you've got a whole plethora of companies that have suddenly sprung up saying, oh, we can install them. But not a lot of people understand them. Not a lot of people understand how they work. So unless the people who install them understand how they work, how are they going to convey how they work to the homeowners? Because I know people who've got them and don't understand how they work, because invariably there's 2 controls and it looks like an aircon unit on the outside, and that's not. That's what's getting the heat into your building. So it's getting that information over. So if we can put something in there along those lines, I think that would be more effective than just saying we don't want them retrofitted, we want them from the beginning. Because if we have them from the beginning, it reduces costs, because they'll be cheaper to produce, because they'll be producing so many of them.
Certainly, and I think as these pieces of equipment become better known and technology improves, people will sign up to it more readily and look for properties that provide those sorts of facilities and opportunities, rather than just looking to see 4 walls, the roof and the colour of the door in effect. In terms of I think the other point, we were talking, you raised the issue over reducing the size of local plans, and I can understand where that came from, and the National Planning Policy Framework was the forerunner to all that. It's difficult. I think we started through our local plan seeking to ensure that it remained a slimmed down version, and then comments come in, and those comments enhance what you wanted to say, so you add those in and you make those contributions. I must say, I feel that there's something in there to support the principle of making these documents more punchy and more to the point. So if we're able to, if I'm allowed to say, if we're able to lose some of the flannel but retain the substance and the passion and the comment and the design issues, I think that would be a good solution in there.
Thank you for that. Anyone else wish to make a comment? I'm looking at Linda. Sorry, Greg. Does Linda want to make a comment as well? I'll bring Greg in first, and then bring Linda in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's put together quite well. I think I have the concerns of everybody here. One thing that seems to be jumping out at me is speed things up. From past experience, you can only go so fast, and then go past that point, quality starts to suffer. And we are talking of heat source pumps. Well, that brings another question I have. A ground source heat pump actually requires some pipe work underground, and it needs a little bit of room, and it also needs to be available to carry out maintenance on when joints decide to pop or something underground. So I would just like to know just how much room is needed for one of those things for a bungalow or semi-detached or something like that, if we got any figures hidden away somewhere. that would no, but I do have the concern. I certainly don't agree that we lose some input that the local planning authority can put in on what's put there. Because some people's idea of beauty is not mine. So everybody has their own personal view of beauty. I think that's it, Chair. I've just got this general concern of everybody else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tickham. There's a number of houses in Corby that have been built with heat pumps and solar. There is one that is open to members of the public to look at. So take yourself across to Corby and they'll be able to provide you with some information. Linda, I think you're unmuted now.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I had got my hand up. I had raised my hand. I'm obviously concur with everything that's already been said. And it's almost like the document is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like we all know there's issues with the planning as it sits, but to almost throw the whole lot out just to what seems to be just to look like to speed up the process is absolutely astounding, really, because none of it seems to fix the bits that we do have wrong, the bits that people do have problems with, you know, the communication, the consultation and all those things that we should be pushing, because to me that's localism, to get more people on board. And it doesn't deal in any way with any of that. It just seems to be right to speed this up. We're going to take it away from everybody and we'll fix it without you having to bother to have a say. Local accountability is crucial in planning. It really is. And I've got already major concerns about affordable housing, because what is called affordable housing really, when you look at young people trying to buy those houses, it's almost sometimes like a con to call it affordable housing, because it really just isn't. And we time and time again see developers coming back to us and reducing those numbers and reducing those numbers again and again. So those sort of things that I'd like to see beefed up are not at all. It's just let's take it all away and speed it up, but let's not put any quality in there. On planning, we spend so much time trying to find reasons to reject things that are really poor quality, no sustainability, no future in them. And I can't see that this white paper is going to help in any way, shape or form to support local people to make local decisions. So anything, Simon, that you can put in there to beef it up, that it's just not what we want here. We want things beefed up so we can actually start to challenge those developers to give us what we want for the future. And that's just not what they're offering in this white paper.
Thank you very much, Linda. Does Jan want to come back? Your hand's still up. Or does anyone else wish to speak before I ask Jan to come back? I see no other hands, so I'll let Jan back in.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question really, Simon. You know, we did the Homes for Healthy Living, that we did that in conjunction with the NHS and oh, help me out. Who else was it? James, who else did we do it with? Anyway, that document that's that basically says how these homes should be built, so that we can live healthy lives. Can that not be included as a comment, that we should adopt that? Because that said, we should have a home that's fit for living in terms of it's got a central storage space, it's got a garden, the rooms are big enough to be lived in, that we've got proper parking, we've got trees, we've got open areas. And I think that makes a beautiful house to be turned into a wonderful home, not little boxes that are going to be future slums, because I wouldn't want to be locked down in a lot of these new houses that are being built nowadays. And on that point, what concerns me is on the fifth point that you, on item 6, page 4, where it says ensure more land is available for homes and developments people and communities need and support renewal of our town and city centres. And that very first bullet point, a new nationally determined binding housing requirement, that scares me, because at the minute, you know, the housing land supply that we're supposed to have, we've got it at the minute, so it's 5 years, but really it's plus 10%, so it's 6 years. But you know, we can't keep building. We do need land to, you know, grow our crops on and feed ourselves with. So that, to me, that to be enforced, which is what we've just discussed, the document you were just discussing when I was a little bit late, so apologies for that. That was imperative, that because the algorithm for that meant that we would have to build a stupid amount of houses that would have been totally intolerable, and we just haven't got the space to build on anyway. So I think, can that be, I don't know how you beef that up, but basically it needs to be set on, the parameters need to be looked at, don't they? They might need more housing down in the south, near London or what have you, because more people now, because of COVID, won't want to work in those offices. They're going to do home working. So yes, they might need the housing there, but we may not need the housing here. And we'll have to supply the food for down south. So therefore we need to be able to grow the wheat to make the Weetabix or whatever. So I think it's looking at the whole picture. And that's the other thing that concerns me. If you go back and look at whereby they want to set up what essentially is a quango, whereby they want to have these companies set up to basically draw up the plans and do everything digitally, not everybody wants to do it digitally, and not everybody has access to do it digitally. So if you've got somebody who's living in a listed building and they need to replace something, they'll just ring us up and say, it's a listed building, but I've got to replace my boiler, or I need to replace my windows because they're rotten. We would sort something like that out. But in the future, if you had these kind of tech companies, would that mean we couldn't do those kind of things? Because, you know, you don't need planning permission to replace things. If everything's done digitally and you can't speak to somebody and the planning office doesn't exist, if you guys didn't exist and didn't have that knowledge and we had to rely on technology, then we may not have the homes of the future. We'll just have boxes. And to take that person out of the mix, which is what this document is doing, it's taken people's thoughts and needs and desires and people's mental health out of the mix and just building a box. And all that's going to happen is the companies get loads of profit and satisfy their shareholders, and we end up with boxes and future problems with people with mental health, people with nowhere to go, and there's no open spaces, and so it's like, you know, it's like throwing a pebble in a pond. It becomes a tsunami because it just builds and builds. And that's what concerns me with this white paper. It's taking all our rights away, taking all the planning policies away that we've just negotiated and dealt with and agreed, or hopefully agreed with the government, and just gives carte blanche to build wherever you like, wherever you like. And I think, you know, what you've done is fantastic, so thank you for that. But I think if we can add a little bit more detail into it, then that would be amazing.
Thank you, Jan. I think that part of one of the points you've raised is Homes England, who are responsible for a lot of the land home areas, have in fact adopted the building, not the Building for Life one. It was Building for Life, it's now Building for Health. They've adopted that for any homes they build. And I think it would be very valuable, Simon, if we could recommend that that is included somewhere within our response, that should be a requirement for all homes that are built in the UK, and not just the ones for Building for Life. Thank you for that. I don't see any more hands up. I do see a hand up. It's James Wilson. You'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Hara. I wasn't not responding. I just couldn't get to my my unmute button in time. Just a couple of points. I think Councillor Tebbett's just mentioned the Building for Health, and I think that does locally. You know, we would be adopting that through the North Northants Joint Planning Unit. But if nationally that sort of thing was brought in, and that's something I think that is going to be introduced, and a lot more prescription will will happen around standards through these national and local design codes. One of my concerns is that if more information is required up front, the local plans are going to take a lot longer to actually deliver. So while the government thinks that, you know, they'll be able to get plans, you know, done much more quickly, if they want, you know, all of the assessment for sites and to be in a position, you know, so that planning applications don't have to be submitted and you have this permission in principle process, then, you know, we'll be spending 5 years, you know, putting plans together, and things just move on and goalposts change, and it'll just be ridiculous. So that's a concern, I think. You know, there's other issues that you know, we need to address, and I let Simon respond if you want to, Simon, on some of the other points that Councillor Hara raised.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've made a note of the points that additional points that have been raised. I can run through some of them, but
please, if you would.
If they're okay. So working my way backwards, there were 2 documents that were highlighted. If I can find where the other one was, but the Building for a Healthy Life standard was something, a named document that we tend to think or feel is a strong message, so we can take that one back and name that. Then there was the Homes for Healthy Living was the other one, and I can search that one out and reference that. We talked of well, it's emphasising this point around taking the policies that we've worked upon, we've consulted upon, and we've sought to gain general support for, then potentially being usurped by something that isn't made by us or necessarily specifically for us. It's that general approach that I'm not sure necessarily meets the requirements. I can place a further emphasis on that. There's the issue around setting nationally set housing targets, and yes, that was a point that was made quite strongly, and I don't see why we shouldn't make that point again within this consultation. The concern that these algorithms are supposed to be directing, there's a logic behind them, but if the calculation is wrong in the first instance, the outcome is going to be wrong also. And then going back a little way, we talked about the heat, the ground heat pumps and enhancements to building regulations. Talked about climate change, and I must say I appreciated Councillor Groom's comment on local residents are our local experts, and if you're supportive of that, I'd like to try to get that in there as well, because I think it emphasises that you lose the democracy, you lose that local knowledge and that input, and it's that point around caring for your local areas.
Thank you, Simon. Margaret Talbot, please. If you can unmute yourself, Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I fully support the officers' draft responses. Just a little bit about the 106 agreements. Obviously, these work far better than the SIL agreements. And if you could emphasise that obviously local communities, towns and parishes have certainly benefited by the 106 agreements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Margaret. I think we've debated long and hard. I like the comment, particularly in item 3, where the blame again on speed of delivery and poor design appears to be directed towards the decision makers, or rather the plan makers. Should it be the plan makers? rather than the development industry, because it's the development industry that actually build them. But that is in fact the key area that doesn't seem to be coming through, that the paper is suggesting that it's the planning that is stopping the building from taking place, rather than the developers managing the demand to keep the prices high. Are you happy that Simon adds these various comments into our response back to government? And with that, can I move to the recommendation and have someone propose the recommendation, please, that we've got with the addition? Got a load of hands up.
I propose it, but can I just ask one thing of James from his comment?
Yeah, please.
James, you know, you said about the when the plans come in, and that they want, it's going to take ages if we have to discuss the whole of the local plan in terms of the minutiae of the detail. You know, when people submit plans now and they get outline planning permission, then it has to come back to us and they say they're going to put this, that and the other in. Were you comparing the local plan with that, with what they want to do now, whereby is the thinking behind this white paper that they'll submit a plan, and within that plan it won't just be outline plan permission, they'll specify, you know, what the house is going to be built off, what kind of heating is going to be in there, what kind of parking space is going to be, and they can't renegotiate the 106, because that's what they do. They come back to us when they start the build out and say, well, we can't afford this, so we're going to give you this amount of money for 106, can we renegotiate it? So under this white paper, would all that have to be agreed before they can put, you know, any foundation in?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure that we know, because the detail isn't within this white paper. And Simon might have a view on this as well. But my sort of understanding is that if, you know, we're moving towards a kind of permission in principle, then we would need to, you know, front load the assessment of sites. So at the moment, we allocate sites on the basis of, you know, understanding a site assessment and whether or not there's like, you know, sustainability, deliverability of the site. And we gain quite a lot of understanding. But what we don't do the environmental impact assessment in relation to ecology. We have an overview of that. But my understanding is if we go to the permission in principle process, then we're likely to have to forward load, you know, a lot of that more information, so that we can be sure that, you know, when development does come forward, you know, because it will be permitted in principle, but we'll have to have the detail, that, you know, we'll have to have signed all of those kind of things off, and therefore it loads a lot more work onto the, you know, the planning policy side of things. In relation to, you know, the 106, I think that would still work much as it has done previously, but what they're proposing is that we move away from that and we have a national kind of system whereby it's an infrastructure levy, I guess similar to what we have at the moment, and this will have to be localized because of land values, etc. So it is quite confusing in terms of how they propose this to work. But I just think it will cause a lot more delay in terms of us, you know, getting forward. And then when, I mean, so what I think they're hoping is that when applications come in, well, it will just, you know, kind of go through, because you've got all of the information, and, you know, it should be a simple question of if it accords with the design codes that will have been adopted. But the design codes will have to be, you know, gone through and adopted. And in my experience, whenever there's a design code for a particular development area, they can take, you know, several months to work up, and in, you know, consultation with local people, but also statutory consultees and the developer themselves. You know, it's a while for that whole process to take forward. So it will end up being much more prescriptive, I think, as well, and therefore you may not get the innovation in terms of design, but also creativity of the planning process. But anyway, that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, James.
Thank you.
So we've got a proposer, and I think Margaret put a hand up to second it. Let me just remind everyone what we're voting on. And we note the consultation on the planning for the future white paper. We agree the content, the appendix 1 should form the response of the Borough Council. And we agree that any additional points that we've discussed today be added to the Council's response ahead of the closing date, be delegated for agreement to the interim head of development services in consultation with the chair of the Planning Policy Committee. So we'll now go to the vote on this and ask Anne to conduct that vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll run through if you could indicate for, against or not voting. Councillor Mike Tebbett.
For.
Councillor Linda Adams.
For.
Councillor John Currell.
For.
Councillor Ruth Groom.
For.
Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Oh, please, Anne.
Councillor Greg Titcombe.
For.
Councillor Margaret Talbot.
For.
That's unanimously carried.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne. That is, thank you for all your debate and comments. Just to add again, the opportunity is there for you individually to send your comments back to government, as well as supporting the Ketonboro Council comments. Thank you all very much indeed. I close the meeting at 7:03. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right.
Everybody.